amazing. And our program director is trying to talk me into the PhD program on organizational development. And I said, no, thank you, because I would make them call me Dr. Smith. No offense, Dr. Gogarty. So that's. So I'm just Doug from the east side. I don't take any offense at that.
Well, I think we've got a couple people I know that have a hard stop at 5. So let's go ahead and get started. I don't know. I guess I didn't look. Rosie, is there an agenda posted for today?
No, I didn't get one. I think I just created like a rough copy of it.
Okay. If it's okay with you guys, I want to quick cover the elections because I do have that, and then we can get into the discussion on the actuarial study and next steps there. The election, as I indicated last meeting, that I knew you were all like unable to sleep because you were worried about the results. All of you who ran were elected. On the active employee side, the votes were even. And so I don't know how Blake and Jessica, we want to determine who is going to serve the 3-year and who is going to serve the 2-year term. On the retiree side, Lola received the most votes and Barb and Rich were tied. So given that, I would say Lola would serve the 3-year term, and then Barb and Rich will need to decide who is going to serve the 2 and who is going to serve the 1-year terms.
Is there anybody on the call that can negotiate or resolve that conflict? Any expertise on the call?
I truly think we probably need to take the ties and just have Kathy draw. And that's a typical draw sticks in the case of a tie.
Okay, let me turn my camera off and grab pieces of paper and draw.
I believe he said sticks, not paper, but.
I don't have sticks.
Start eating popsicles. You got
heads.
20 minutes.
I call heads.
4 popsicles.
And it needs to be out of a
heads
top
or tails. Odd or even.
Got Starbucks drink stoppers here.
All right.
I literally have Doug's office, so let me know what you need. I'm in Doug's office, so anything you want me to grab.
All right, we're gonna flip a coin because I happen to have one of those.
Jessica,
all right.
Call it.
Jessica, call it.
I said heads.
And heads it. Okay, wait a minute. Is the winner the 2-year or the 3-year?
Is that a trick question? I think the winner gets a 3-year term.
Okay, so Jessica, you're 3-year, Blake, you're 2-year. And then
okay. I can live with that.
Barb and Rich, we need to do a runoff between the 2 of you. The winner will serve the 2-year. The other person will serve the 1-year. Barb, would you like to call it?
I'll let Rich call it.
Okay, Rich, do you want to call it?
I'll let Barb call it.
Great.
Oh, come on, guys.
I say tails.
It's heads.
All right.
So Rich, you will serve the 2-year term and Barb the 1-year term. Rosie, did you get all that down?
Got it.
Got it. Perfect. Okay. So that serves the election piece. We did have a couple write-ins on the active side, and one person had like 3 or 4 votes, and so I'm going to contact that individual and see. She had 3 votes. I'm going to contact her and see if she would be interested in running. On the retiree side, there were no write-ins, so we will, and we have 3 members, so we're good there. So we're just looking for that active, and then we are still searching for more citizen representatives as well. All right. That's the end of that topic.
Did we ever pan the name out from Terry Caldwell Johnson?
You know, I don't think we did.
Okay. I mean, maybe just we need to follow up with her because I know that she
Yeah.
had the name of someone. I don't think we ever heard the name, but we just want to
Right.
make sure we coordinate with her and see if she's got someone that's interested.
Okay. Thank you for that reminder. And then I believe the next topic on the agenda is the continued information from the actuarial study. We had asked Larry to look at the 1 year or 1%, 2%, and 3% salary increases and what that did to the projections. And he has provided that. I did send it to everybody via email. Doug, I did not send you one. Did you get it? I'll send it. I'll forward it to you. If anybody else needs it, just drop me a note in the chat and I will forward it to you as well. I'm trying to see who else is on the call that might not have gotten it. I don't think Josh or Doug, so I'll send it to both of you. Okay. With that, do you want Larry to kind of go over the findings again, or do you just want questions, or what's the wish of this committee?
I'm
Would you,
open to jump into questions. I thought his data made sense, but I will leave that to others. If there's questions, I think we should do those first.
All right. Go for it. You can start shooting questions.
I just want to try to summarize. And so, Larry, if anything I say here is incorrect, red flags all the way around. But as I looked through the analysis, it didn't seem to matter, even as those adjustments to 2% and 1%, that for any of the employee groups, and I'm going to refer to them as groups. So for those of you who are maybe newer on the call, the data from Gallagher that Larry put together is in sort of age chunks, 40 to 44, 45 to 49. So you hear me refer to them as groups. It did not look that at age 55 or at age 57, and in most cases, even up to age 60, that moving people to IPERS at this point was going to sort of, no such thing as a guarantee, but it didn't look like that movement was going to be financially beneficial, or it may at best be financially neutral. Fair statement?
I would agree with that. Yeah, it looked like at the younger ages, there was nobody really winning. And again, we've got assumptions in here, and anything can happen. But using the assumptions we came up with, it looked like the younger ages, almost everybody lost. Some people might get close to neutral, as you said. Yes, I would agree with that statement.
Yeah, and then it looked like at age 60 and 62, it started moving more in the direction that perhaps an IPERS movement is beneficial, but even that was still very hit and miss. It was not a consistent draw of the line that, yep, here's the line and it's clear for everyone. So even at 60 and 62, it wasn't a clean sweep. Is that fair, Larry?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And like you said earlier, we've got to put these people into buckets or groups or whatever you want to call them. And you may have two people that are fairly similarly situated, maybe have a year different service, same age or something like that, where one may benefit, one may not. And ultimately, you would have to at that point say that you have to would retire at 60 or 62. Because if you did decide you wanted to go out earlier, again, those ages were not beneficial.
So the question that I then have is sort of, I guess, if you were to put in mind, is that the overall analysis says that these movements would be potentially financially risky, potentially might even look detrimental. My question, though, is because we can't see the data at an even finer level, and this was a question I sent to Kathy and Shashank, and I don't know if they sent it to you, Larry, was I want to have some confidence that if we took the data even into smaller bands, so for example, everyone who's age 40, everyone who's age 41, everyone who's age 42, because we would have the ability to make the groups even at that point, I'd like to know, is the data basically the same where there is just no clear group, even if you get smaller, where that movement to IPERS makes sense. Because I think one of the things that this group sort of committed to is we said, hey, if it makes sense to move, and if it helps 2 people, then it helps 2 people. If it helps 10 people, and what I want to be able to know and be able to share with the active members is that even within those groups, are there any identical aged employees, so all the 42-year-olds, all the 47-year-olds, that making the move to IPERS, would there be a beneficial group within that narrowing of the band?
There could be, but it could be also at specific ages. I think we're going to have trouble finding any of those benefit at the 55 and 57. There's just not enough time in IPERS to make up for, you've had years already in Des Moines. So I would think we would still be talking about groups. And I did not look at, I mean, we did calculations for everybody, but then we grouped them and I didn't do that granular of groups. So I can't really speak to that, but we can obviously do that. I think we'd be somewhat in a similar situation where we get that, the people that would transfer would have to almost say that I'm going to work to age 60 or 62. We may find 1 or 2 people in the groups that benefited 57. But it would be very, you'd almost be naming out a person or 2 if people benefited at that age. Some of them, it's going to depend on the service. Age 62, it becomes more beneficial for people that have the 20 years of service, because they can go out as an unreduced or early retirement under IPERS. So, you can see some of those people where that group would do it. But I don't think we have a whole lot of those people either that are younger that would actually get into that band. There are a few that would hit it, but you may be looking at people under 42 right now. But again, then they would have to be making a decision. I want to stay to age 62, and life changes for all of us at certain points, and especially when we're 20 years from retirement, it may be hard to make that call. But I mean, that is, if that's something the committee wants, we can do that. The problem with that is if we get too granular, you start knowing exactly who everybody is, and then that becomes hard to, that I don't know if that's an issue, but like I said, we've done the calculations for everybody, so that would be my only concern there.
Yeah, and I would agree. I echoed that concern. Like, I did not want to have public information where someone could view and see, and that's why I sent it specifically to our plan administrative team. But I want to be able to have confidence as a plan member that, within an age group that I wouldn't have, again, let's just say the 47-year-olds in the plan saying, well, this stinks. I'm in 47 and the other 5 of us, we would have all been 5 people that it would have been beneficial to move over. But because we lumped into a 45 to 49 band, it didn't look like it was going to be beneficial. And so my ask, and I would be curious what others, I'd like to make sure that we turn that stone over and make sure that we've exhausted to every level that piece and point about IPERS so that no one comes back and says, well, you just didn't look at it in a way that it would actually make sense for me. And the second question I'll throw in, then I'll be quiet, is what do people think about, because this is information that's actually specific and unique to members, and not that we would have the ability to send it out immediately, what do people think about, should this analysis be provided to each individual member to show what information we have and know about their sort of DMTRS projection and IPERS movement, so that people actually have their specific information from this analysis?
That's a question to the committee, correct? That's not a question to me. Okay. Thank you.
I think if we were to do that, we'd have to have somebody, we'd have to have a meeting where it could be explained. I don't think it's real easy to understand. Just look.
You went on mute about halfway through, Barb.
Oh, sorry. No, I just think that, it's difficult to understand, and I don't think we could just hand it out to members. I think we would have to have an explanation. And, the ability for people to ask questions about it.
Probably want to be clear what we would expect them to be able to do with the information as well, right? There's a lot of kind of possibilities in this analysis that probably aren't feasible for whatever reason. So just sort of clarity around like, what does it mean? What do you need to know? What do we expect you to do with it? I mean, do we have a clear understanding or idea of like what they would be able to do with this information? Or is it more just sort of, if you
I
do
think-
get these raises, here's what it would look like?
Well, I think, Brad, one of the things is that we know that there are some people within a band or within a group that even at age 57, moving diapers is beneficial. But perhaps there's two other people in that exact same band that are not. And so when we look at this overall data, I think it's easier for us as a group to say, or I'm going to speak my opinion now. You look at this, you say that movement to diapers in bigger chunks, this data is telling us we're putting people in a financial risk. However, there are individuals that we know within this data set that perhaps those movements diapers actually do make sense on their own, and they won't have a way to know that. And that's what I'm wondering is if providing that individual data, even though it is pretty complex and requires a storyline, do we sort of have an obligation at this point to share that because you and I don't know it, but within that analysis, it would be known that you could find and say employee 32 on this list. And when you look at it at age 57 and so on, it actually would be beneficial. And our report doesn't reflect that.
Yeah.
Well, I think correct me if I'm wrong, Larry, but your spreadsheet that we didn't see, but your spreadsheet did go by individual. So you have all the individual
Right.
people there, and you were averaging the results of those age bands, correct?
Correct.
And so in some cases, like if it was under age 42 or something, it was like 4 people,
Right.
and another group was 13, another group was 9 people. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm wondering, Blake, if we share that with people, and like let's say there is one person that it benefits out of all of those different groups, one person, and we tell them, hey, this would be a benefit to you, but we are unable to move them.
Yeah, I thought one of the things, and this kind of gets to your point, I thought one of the things is we were looking for a group of people. I don't think we were looking for, it may help this 35-year-old, it may help this 47-year-old. So let's move. I thought that was the intent, at least that I had heard from earlier on. But I may have that wrong.
No, I think, Larry, you're correct. My worry is that are we doing our due diligence as the representatives of the active members in that role if we have data that would reflect and show that even though the group may not be able to move, but us having a set of information that would say this employee would benefit, I'm struggling with that. Like I get it from a
Well,
group dynamic. I just wonder
this
what
an-
information, what do we owe to people at this point
Okay,
with
but-
this?
Blake, this may be an intellectual argument. What we need to know from Larry, is there a case like that? Is there even one like
Yep.
that? Because
True.
I mean, this could just be an argument of intellectual argument, a thought exercise, which may not be necessary, right? Like looking at the patterns here with such small groups, when you have patterns that are that definitive, there may not be anybody that has a benefit that's different than the rest of the people in that age band. Maybe Larry could tell us if there is somebody like that.
I mean, I have not, obviously we did the calcs on an individual basis, but when I was looking at the results, I was not going individually through line by line we did the calculation with one spreadsheet, we checked them on another spreadsheet, and then we combined them, but it wasn't like I was saying this person that's 44 is going to benefit here and this person that's 44 is not. So that would be something I would have to take offline and have to get back with you on that. So I couldn't tell you that off the top of my head right now.
I have a question.
Sure.
Looking at Josh's questions over here in the chat. The second one, would the purpose of this be, what is the purpose of this? Is the purpose, so we're pointing out to somebody, hey, if you leave us and you go to IPERS, it's an advantage to you? Or what?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that, and I'm not sure that I really want to be doing that. They can do that exercise on their own. But Blake, do you see a different purpose that I'm not realizing?
I do. I think the different purposes is that we use different assumptions. So if I contact you, Kathy, tomorrow and I say, I would like an analysis that tells me where I'm going to be, the numbers that I'm going to get from you for my projection will not be the numbers that I'm getting from Larry here. And so then I have to know how to go in and do the analysis the way Larry did in order to, we're close, but we're not doing apples and apples and apples. And I get it. Like, it's, my intent here is not to say, well, we want to encourage people to leave. My intent is, though, we've had this conversation for 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 or 15 years about these sort of gaps and discrepancies and issues with people. And if leaving the district helps someone and we know that, do we have the obligation to share that with them? That's my question. I don't have a great fair answer. But I feel like where I'm struggling is the members paid for this report, this analysis. It's the membership's information. Do we owe it to them? And I agree with actually Jessica's question. And the reason I posed it was because when we went through this the first time, there were comments made several times that there could be people within a group that would be benefiting and others that wouldn't. And then this is the average. And so that's where I was making that assumption.
You know, I think it could be dangerous as well, just because if you give this out, we've made certain assumptions going several years into the future that, you know, we don't know, you know, especially, you know, the excess earnings, for example, you know, we've done 0 and 12%. Somebody may ask, you know, what we could end up with is some of the, you know, people asking, well, where is it best for, you know, what would be the breaking point? Would it be 6% with excess earnings? Would it be 7%? You know, I think, you know, we could get in trouble because, you know, if the earnings of the trust aren't what they are, or if the excess earnings given to retirees once these people retire are not where they, you know, or where the study went, will they be looking back on this and saying, you know, I stayed with Des Moines because you told me this was going to be better, and here we did. We got horrible returns, you know, and so IPERS would have been better. So I don't know that, you know, that's my thought on it. And I'm, of course, not a member of the committee. I'm just kind of putting that out there, that there are a lot of assumptions here that we're making. And when, you know, we've done a lot of different assumptions, and sometimes people will end up better, and sometimes, you know, and it may, those assumptions that we're changing, you know, for even the 0, the 1, 2, and 3% are going to flip certain people from, you know, a beneficial to not beneficial group. I'm sure there are several people within the study that moved in those directions as we went through it. So, you know, if we were going to do that, we'd have to be very comfortable with our assumptions and make sure that those were out there, as this is what we're assuming, and it's not guaranteed.
Do you have ASAP 41 concerns, Larry, with kind of this work being used in that way?
No, I mean, I think we could put enough caveats there. I would more look at it as a legal thing, maybe for the Des Moines more than me. I mean, you know, I can put all the caveats I need that are going to protect me and you know, protect me from ASOP 41 and all of the, you know, those are, for those of you who don't know, the actuarial standards of practice. There's certain things you have to put in any sort of documentation that you're doing, relaying your assumptions and really. And so, yeah, I think we would want to put that in the you know, whatever presentation we gave. But I don't know if it's as much a concern for me as somebody coming back, you know, 15 years from now and saying, here was my statement you gave me, and I stayed with the school district because of this, and now the returns were horrible, and IPERS, of course, doesn't go on return. So IPERS is, they've got to just put in more contributions, so they could have been better, So in plan design can change. There's so many things that can change between now and your plan design can change, their plan design can change. So it's not something we can't do, and I'll leave that up to the committee. That was just my thought on it, is that we may be setting ourselves up here. If people start taking that as a reason to leave or to stay with Des Moines.
So the purpose of this study was to determine what or when there is an advantage for some members, younger members, to switch to IPERS. We're trying to figure out if that's even worth the effort. Wasn't that the original purpose?
I think that was, I think the group we were originally going to look at were just under age 50, but we decided, since we were doing the calculations, we might as well just do the calculations for everybody. And so we threw the extras in there just to say, Yeah,
and there's about 33 people who are under the age of 50 that are currently active. Is that right?
I don't. Yeah, I think that seems about right. My contacts are not focusing very well. That seems about right.
Okay, and the most we could, according to the last time we talked about, if we move people to IPERS, how many? It couldn't be more than 20% of the group, right? And how many people we got in the group now? 110 or 140?
When I did this group, I think it was 140. Again, I was using data as of, I think, 7/1/2022. So that may have changed.
And our
So
inactive
the 33 would
actives
be
also
about
counted.
We'll say that again.
Remember that by definition, we were told that our active group also included our inactive members. And so you have the active employee group, but we also have the inactives as well.
Yeah, that's right. So that's still, those 33 people would be about just right around a little over 20%, right? So even if there was an advantage to moving them, we have to move them in a group. I don't think IPERS is going to take them one at a time. We have to say anybody who fits this definition has to move, right? And so what we're seeing is when we look at them in blocks and say, okay, who fits this definition? Would this be a benefit? We're seeing that no is not, unless you want to stay to age 62. And then it's a wash if everything stays the same. If the plans change, if the markets change, if anything else changes, it may not be a wash. But based on where we are now and the trajectory of, past predicting the future, then if everything stayed the same, if you stayed to 62, it could be a slight benefit. And if you stay to 65, it could be a slightly better benefit, right? But only for a certain small segment. For most, there's not enough time for them to get 20 years of work in to get to that point. There just isn't that much time left in their careers. So
right,
it's not
I would
an
agree there's
most.
not a large enough group. We get into where some of these, and even some of these that we're seeing where they're benefiting, and I'm showing 1, 2, or 3%. First of all, that's pretty close if all assumptions aren't met. And second of all, there's definitely people, well, I don't know this, but my assumption is there are people within those groups that are really close, where somebody may be a 0, somebody may be a 1, somebody may be a -1. So if we're looking to really move a group, it becomes difficult, because you've also got it, even if you've got a group of 20, that doesn't, and they've all got, well, all of them are probably not going to want to stay till 62. I mean, somebody might say, I'm going out at 55, so this is not going to be an advantage to me. With the rest of you that want to stay here till 62, that's great, but and you'll win, but this is a bad decision for me. So,
And I think IPERS has been pretty clear. It's all or nothing. So everybody who fits into that criteria box
We'd have to
has to
agree.
go, or none of them can. So if we say, okay, here's the criteria, we're going to move this group, they have to meet these specific parameters. It doesn't matter how your individual will work out. If you're in that group, you're going. And if you're not in that group, you're not. I mean, that is how I understand it from IPERS. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
I think you
Jessica.
do, but we've decided what these bigger groups are. And my question is I just want to make sure, because IPERS doesn't say that we can't define the group as everyone who's age 48. I just want to have some assurance that everyone who's age 48, that we wouldn't find that that happens to be a group that you go, that group actually would benefit to make that move over. They would benefit at 57, 60, 62. That's all I want to make sure is that we've looked in clearly. I completely agree that the way we've seen all of these groups, I can't support, any recommendations to move groups to IPERS because it won't be. There's people that are going to say, hey, this is a crappy deal for me. I just want to make sure that we don't, if that data is sliced smaller, I don't think it's going to make a difference, but I want to be able to be assured that we've done that. Given that we've beaten up IPERS for 3 years and we're right here at the data point, I want someone to go through 140 cell checks and just make sure that we don't say there actually is a group of 3 people that this would be the definition. It would be a group. It would meet our legal standard. Let's talk to those 3 people. And just to make sure, that's all that I'm coming at, in terms of my angle of this, is just to make sure every dotted I and crossed T in this data has been looked at clearly. That's my point. And maybe I didn't make it clearly before.
So can I ask a question, Larry? Is there anyone in our group right now that if they went, it's advantageous for them to go to IPERS at 55?
I would have to, I have that data. I've got it in spreadsheets. We've got several spreadsheets. I'd rather just not
Right. And
do
I
that on
get
the
it, but I
spot. It
think,
is something that I can do, and give you, and I can tell you how many people if they go at 55. Now, one of the assumptions we made, you have to have at least 7 years to be able to go at 55. So, we were looking at people that would be, and we said the transfer date would be 7/1/23. We just made that, we just picked a date. So we were saying anybody 48 or under at that date, we would look at for say age 55. We can look at that. I think that will be very, very easy and quick, but we've kind of got calculations in a couple of different spreadsheets, and I'd prefer not to do that on the phone. I could easily give you totals on those people and what group they would be in, or what age if you want to get down that granular. I guess we've also got different salary scales too, so we could look through each salary scale and see that as well. But
I just don't want you to have to go through a ton of extra work if we already kind of know. I don't have a problem if you want to look at each age group, but looking at it through each salary schedule, I don't think makes a lot of sense from my vantage point. If you just look at it from one, that should tell us the same story. But even if the 35-year-old were to go today, at age 55, they won't reach the rule of 88. They won't reach 62 and 20, and they won't have 65. So they're going to have a reduced benefit.
right.
So if that
I think-
35-year-old were to go, it's not advantageous. And
I
so I'm
think at
wondering if
those
we're
are-
beating a dead horse.
Yeah, I think at those earlier ages, it's going to be hard to find anybody that it's going to benefit. The percentages there are relatively big as far as people not being, not benefiting. So it would it would be it would be, it's hard for me to see that a lot, maybe we've got one person that squeaks through, but like you said, we're not getting at those younger ages. They don't have a whole lot of service because everybody in this group has been with Des Moines for several years, and at least in their 30s. So, you know, by 55, we may see one or two, but I would highly doubt we'd see one or two.
So this is the committee's report. So I will defer to the committee for direction as to how you want to proceed on this. But I think we need a consensus committee-wise what we want Larry to look into if there are things we want him to continue to research.
Well, I think that Blake makes his point that we should, if we have the data, we shouldn't stop now. If we can see if there is a smaller group that would benefit, I'll be surprised and shocked if there is, based on the small population that we're looking at, and looking at the averages. I just can't see. I mean, it would have to be a very extreme case for someone to have a positive out of those kind of numbers. But I guess it doesn't hurt to look. But the question is, how fine you want to go? Do you want to go down to the individual for those 33 people specifically under the age of 48? Or are we talking about you want to do all 140? Go ahead, Barb.
I just have a question about the results of that. So suppose you find two random people that it benefits supposedly, they don't get to be moved anyway, correct? And so then are you, setting up another issue with people being, angry about that? And part of my understanding as part of this report was that no harm could come to, part of it was to show that there wouldn't be any harm done to any other member if some were to be moved. So I guess that's my question about the specific information or my concern about it.
Yeah, it looks like to me the only way they'd be able to do that is if they quit Des Moines.
Right.
And and went on their own, because the numbers would still kind of apply. But that would not be what the school district would want, I wouldn't think. And so, that's, because we're not gonna have a group. Now, we can get that granular. I don't think it's that much extra work, really, because we've got the numbers out there. So however we want to go with that, I'm fine with, but anyway.
And I want to add, because this is the third person who is, and again, I apologize, I'm not being clear. What I want to know is every DMTRS member who is, for example, age 47, which would be clearly defined as a group. I want to know, would all of the 47-year-olds benefit at age 57, 60, 62? That's the group I want, and I want to know at age 48. If there's even one in that 47 group, then we don't have a group, and all the things that everyone has talked about are true. I'm not looking for necessarily the randoms. I do think we have to deal with that issue of, if we know that and we don't share that with members, or they don't have a way to access that, I have a problem with that, because our members paid for the
question.
Right. So the question back to Larry is, I'd like to know at each age band where everyone would be similar age, because then we would have a group by our definition that we talked about with our attorney. Would there be a group that would benefit? And I would like to know not just at age 55, because we know in 55 that is not a typical retirement age in Des Moines Public Schools. I'd like to know at 57 or 60, 62.
But to Barb's point, what action does that support? And is that action feasible? Or are we just knowing it to know it?
Brad, if we had all of the 47-year-olds that would benefit moving diapers, we would move them. I think we could make the recommendation that all the 47-year-olds could go to diapers, because we can see this is a group that we can define and see, and we would actually be able to reach out to those 2, 3, 5, 10 people. That's my point, is like, if you're going to do all of this and we leave 3 people that could benefit and we don't do it for them because they were in a band that was a bigger group, I think we missed the mark.
What do we do if there's one 47-year-old?
I think we would need to have the discussion then, is that a group by definition, and could they go?
How much does that cost the district? Has that been refreshed lately? Like, is there money to do that?
Well, to move them to IPERS, the district would have to address the contribution gap difference between a DMTRS and an IPERS employee, which is typically 1.34% on average of their salary.
But no upfront cost. It's kind of a go forward adjustment.
Correct.
And would IPERS take just one if that, or 5, or did there have to be a certain percentage of the number of the
There
whole, of
is
the whole
no,
group?
there was no stated number. I think it's
Okay.
something that this committee would have to discuss.
That was probably the piece of information that I was missing, was there wasn't an upfront cost associated with this, because I think the update we got a few months ago was there's no money anywhere to do any of this if it involves like a big check up front. So that's helpful to know.
So I
Okay,
don't
so
have a
we'll-
problem getting the information, and seeing what it says.
Okay.
So Larry, what I'm hearing is for each individual age, correct, each band, so each 45-year-old, each 46-year-old, to look and
Right.
see if if the whole group is advantaged or disadvantaged. It has to be all or none, right?
Okay, yeah, and everything again is done at 7/1/2023, so it'll be every 45, everybody that's 45 as of 7/1/23, and everybody, and so on. So yeah, I don't think that's much. We've got a lot of combinations. We can put all that together, but we've got them on different spreadsheets and with different salaries and different things like that. So that's the reason I don't want to do that, particularly on the fly while we're doing this right now. But it is something I can do for each age, and can do that and get that back to you.
And I'm going to be honest, I think all we would want or need to know is, did you identify a group where it was a yes, where it actually was beneficial? And if it all comes back that it's a no, it's a no. But if there is 1, 2, 3, I don't know how many groups, that's I think what we would want to know, because then there would be action that this group could talk about based on that. Otherwise, the rest of the data, sadly, unfortunately, says to us there's not a lot of action here.
So can I clarify one thing? Is it advantageous at any of the ages, or is it advantageous from 55 on?
I would
Because I
want
think
to
that's a
know
different
50,
question.
50. It is. I think 50. I don't see the 55 as a value statement, because I don't see employees leaving at 55. To me, it's the 57. The question is sort of doing the average employee, the average retirement. That's the number to me that's more significant, because I think you're right. If you do 55, no one's going to be beneficial.
So and I just want to make sure I'm clear. Are we doing it for everybody, for the 57, 60, 62, and 65? Is that okay? All right. So do not worry about the 55 at this point. Okay. That makes sense. I can do that.
Or are we then saying that there's no value to the being able to go at 55? Because I know we had that conversation last time. Jessica, I think, articulated it much better than I will, of what's the value that people place on that ability to be able to go at 55.
Yeah, I don't know if we have an answer to that question, because that's a question for the people, right? Like, I don't know if we can answer that one off the top of our head. I have a separate question. When you looked at when I got the data tables with your 1% salary increase, 2%, 3%, those comparisons, I ran through all those numbers and I found myself kind of getting lost in what all the numbers and columns meant. So can you sum up for us, Larry? Was there any advantage by looking at different salary increases, those assumptions?
I mean, it was a little bit more advantageous, I believe, at the, let me see, it was at the at the lower salary increases, actually. So You know, but it didn't, you know, it didn't really swing, you know, again, for the 55s, it didn't swing anything. For the 57s, it didn't swing anything. When you got to 60, there were some that were negative under 3% salary, but when we looked at 1% salary, they were a positive. So, you know, I don't know, I'm not familiar with what the district's salary scale is and how that works, and, you know, the economic conditions too. Will we be still at high inflation, and will salaries have to go up? But, you know, at that point, you're still kind of buying the same thing. You know, you're looking at your real salary. But at the end of the day, I think, you know, as you get the lower the salary, the better off you are for the retirement comparison.
Larry, how hard did you scrutinize investment returns for this analysis? Just thinking, because we talked for a while about, you know, as the population of this plan ages, you're likely to shift away from equities into more lower yielding fixed income investments. So we're likely to see sort of like a, you know, maybe with rates going up over the last year, this might reverse itself a little bit, but you kind of expect the investment mix to lean more conservative and lower yielding. Additionally, is there a risk here in this plan design? I think the answer is yes, to what interest rates are at the annuitization event that does not exist in IPERS. And is that a dimension we need to be stressing as well? Because there's always a risk of, you know, you get to the end of someone's working life and rates go up, fair value of the investments goes down, maybe their annuitization goes up, or the opposite happens where rates go to zero and the annuity they're able to purchase with their sort of allocated part of the fund goes way down.
Yeah, and the way this plan is set up, there isn't, unless the design of this plan has changed, you know, it's in the plan that we use 4.5%. So, and the mortality table that we use are currently fixed. I think we've looked at that in the past as to see what the impact would be. You know, so as of right now, the plan design that it's currently under, that we did not do anything with. If we went new mortality tables, we kind of done another study on that a while back, I believe. It may have been before or right as I got here, right as I got to Gallagher. As far as the investment returns, we really just took the 5-year average that was given to us by Kathy. That was the decision that was made earlier on. We didn't really, you know, if we're going to get less returns, then yeah, IPERS would look better. You know, because we're annuitizing an account balance. So, you know, that there is something there as well. But there was not a deep dive into that for this study. We kind of took averages that were provided, and that was decided earlier on in the study.
Okay. That's helpful. So no annuitization event risk unless there's a big mortality assumption change.
Yeah.
But maybe, I don't know. I apologize. Last call when you were going over this, I was going Christmas tree shopping, so I wasn't able to look at the spreadsheets super closely. But
okay.
It looked like this was all kind of Excel based that you were doing a lot of this math in, and so stressing investment returns isn't a huge undertaking, I guess. Is that fair to say, or would it take another turn of a model to?
It shouldn't be much to change the investment returns. I mean, we could do a different investment return as well.
I don't know. What does the rest of the committee think about that?
Yeah, I do think, Brad, to kind of piggyback, I think what this report does is it does set out for us. I think we need to have those conversations about, you know, the assumptions that Larry has in here is a little over 5.7% rates of return. We're in that 11-12% range for excess earnings. I think we need to talk about, is that sort of the trajectory that we're on, knowing that nobody has that crystal silver ball? We haven't done that for probably 3 or 4 years, kind of had our financial team come back and talk to us about, you know, where we are. Do we need to be making any adjustments to do the best we can to make these assumptions, you know, hold true as long as we can, given that we're making pretty significant decisions here in terms of recommending to people one way or another, and also needing to open the conversation back up to what else can we do? We've had lots of conversations about other pieces of this plan, and ultimately, other than kind of the retirement incentive, we really haven't made many other changes to what's going on. And I think we need to ourselves have the discussion, but I also hope that our plan administrative team can come to us, as they've had sort of years of listening to this dialogue and conversation. And I think I would like to see our planned administrative team come forward with some recommendations as well.
So I guess for now, are we looking at a different assumed rate of return as well? Or are we good with that?
So I think, just to clarify, we use the interest rate that was credited to the participant accounts on an annual basis. That's the interest rate that was used through this. And we used a 5-year average of what has been done, what the plan has seen in the past 5 years. I also went back and looked at the 10-year average, and there was little to no difference between the 5 and 10 year, or very insignificant difference.
Wasn't it 5.4 compared to 5.7?
Yeah, something. I mean, it wasn't there wasn't a monumental difference between the two. So I'm not sure if, assuming a 4% interest rate, what's our justification for that?
Well, I think our standards of practice say that we need to use a 5-year average. Tweaking with it, I think it just kind of violates the normal standards of practice when you're trying to do this kind of study. I think we need to stick to protocols.
I mean, it's informational, right? To kind of understand how sensitive the plan outcomes are to different rates of return, because that's a reality that could happen, right? I mean, rates could go low for a long time. Crediting rates could change. It'd be good to know over a 20-year horizon, if crediting rates change, what's the impact to your members, right?
But they could also go up. I mean, can we predict every scenario? I don't know.
Well, you want us to do plus or minus 1% and see how that changes? Then you've got kind of a sensitivity. I mean, the lazy actuary in me wants to do that. And of course, I'm looking at Larry and pushing the easy button to say, of course, this is easy, right? But I think it's valuable to kind of know how sensitive the outcomes are to changes in rates, because that could happen. I think we've been lucky with a lot of stability because we had a big portfolio of long dated bonds that had high yields. That's turned over quite a bit. We're in kind of a good period right now for bond returns, at least like newly issued bonds, but that could reverse and we could be in for another long-term regime of low returns. It'd be good to know, because if you don't reflect that in your crediting rate, it bubbles up somewhere else. Either through like a shortfall in the assets that you have. You can't paper over that.
But does that then also lead us to say, well, mortality tables that we're using are currently fixed. Do we need to look at other mortality tables that I mean, we could go on and on and on and on. We need to come to some sort of resolution, my friends. This has been dragging on for a very long time. And as while I love a data dive, anyone who knows me personally knows that I love to get in and crunchy on the numbers. That's one of my passions, like a hobby. I love that stuff. However, we are on a time crunch. We do need to move forward with a recommendation sooner rather than later. We should have done this years ago. We're still here,
but
right? I'm feeling a sense of urgency.
I'm just saying we've finally got a responsive, sharp actuary doing this analysis for us. I think we could run a couple of sensitivities to understand. I mean, I can drive a car with my eyes closed, but that's going to end in disaster. Not understanding the sensitivities we have to rates, to mortality, is going to end up in disaster, either for participants, taxpayers, the district, whatever else. Particularly if we're going out and saying, with an analysis to individuals, to say, base your decision for your retirement off of this analysis, without the caveats of saying, if rates do this, here's what it looks like. If mortality does this, here's what it looks like. They deserve that, I think, especially if we're going with personalized recommendations to people. I would want to know what some alternative scenarios look like.
I think we can do that fairly easily. Now we're getting into a lot of scenarios there. So, but I think now we get back to the age thing. How many scenarios do we want to, can we bring down the number of scenarios we need to see on the age thing? Because if we run them at all, I think I heard somebody last time say like 3% is probably too high of a salary scale. Do we want to see this at all? Do we just want to use the rate of return that we're using for the other piece that Blake was asking for, which is the ages? Are we good using that? And then we can kind of come back and just change the rate for the other. I just don't want to get into, we've got, at some point we've got way too many numbers that, it's like, oh, hey, this person benefits here, this person doesn't benefit, it's like.
Yeah, I don't think you do like a whole broad matrix of combinations. I don't think you want to do that. I think you pick sort of like a cohort. I think you pick a salary increase, call it 1 or 2%, whatever we want to put in there,
Okay.
and then do individual shocks. Don't think about a grid of shocks. I would do plus or minus 1% to understand that sensitivity, and then pick a mortality table that was released after I was born, maybe, instead of the one we're using.
Okay, so you want to change the mortality? Well, then we get to, do we want to change the interest? So the interest rate and the mortality table are both fixed. I was thinking we were going to still use the fixed mortality table and interest rate. Because if we switch to that, it's going to lower. Now interest rates aren't, depending on what we pick for an interest rate, could be higher. So I don't know. I mean, the sensitivity that way, again, we can do it, but at some
Can I
point
make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Can Brad and Larry connect on what, Brad, you feel from an actuarial standpoint would give us what we need? And the two of you work it out, and we trust you as our actuarial representative on our advisory committee to do that, to make that recommendation to Larry? Would the rest of the committee feel agreeable?
Yes.
I'll just say plus or minus 50 basis points on the return, and I'm good from there, I think.
Okay, and just use the mortality. Yeah, and I think we can. And we went through that too, because that would be hard right now to change the interest rate or the mortality table, because more than likely you're going to see benefits go down, and and that would be probably a hard message to give to people that are trying to get a better benefit, I guess. That's right, that are worried about they're not getting an equal benefit. So maybe we just do the plus and minus. Is that fine with you, Brad? The plus and minus 50 points.
Seems like a
if we need to go further
range.
from that, if we need to go further from that, then we'll do that. But let's start with that, I guess, right now, and then we can go from there. But you're right. I mean, at some point it's going to have to be changed. But when is that mess? I mean, it doesn't have to be. You you could use it. People use it. So using 1971 TAM and stuff for. But anyway, they shouldn't be. But anyway,
ignore that hole in the dam.
So until we get this additional information from Larry, we're kind of in a holding pattern again. Am I hearing that correctly? So
but
Larry,
I'm
how
confident.
soon?
Yeah, I'm confident Larry's a good responsive actuary here, in sharp contrast to our previous experiences. So I'm feeling good about this.
I would echo that. So Larry, as soon as you can get me that information, I will again send it out to the whole committee, and then we'll try to regroup as quickly as possible, because I don't want this momentum that we've got to stop. And I feel like we do that frequently, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So let's keep going on it, and we'll get something.
Are we still tentatively holding January 11th at 4 p.m.? I mean, that would be our next second Wednesday meeting. And obviously, I mean, if there's something that needs to happen, before that, it may not be too much before that. It could be the week before.
I have it on my calendar.
I hear there's a holiday coming up soon.
I have it on my calendar, so let's just plan on that meeting. And
Sounds good.
We will
Okay.
get
I
information
should be
on.
able to get you something next week on this. I got a couple of things I've got to finish up for other clients this week that I promised out. And then after that, I can come back to this and do that. So, all right.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
All
you
right,
so
thank
much,
you.
Larry. We really
I-
appreciate your efforts here.
Thank you.
you.
Y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Are we done for the day? Okay. We'll see you in January. Bye.
Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays.
Happy New Year's.